Hey, everybody. Welcome to Elseworlds Exchange. I'm Sal. I'm joined today by Tom King. Tom, welcome back to the show.
What a pleasure to be here. It's very exciting to see you, dude.
Pleasure's all mine.
It's nice to see a friendly face.
Same. Yeah. Especially in these times when we have to kind of portion out which friendly faces we see, or when we find out, hey, that friendly face was actually a mask the whole time. Oh my god.
God, don't bring that up.
But no, it's been a spell since you've been back to the show, so I'm thrilled to have you. I have plenty more Predator pitches for you, so we'll hang on to those until the end of the show. Obviously,
I'm in. Whatever.
I swear to God,
emailing Dark Horse today, and I was like, maybe they want to do a Predator Batman thing.
No, Marvel has Predator now, so that's over.
Oh,
Those
that's
days
right.
Are over.
That's right. Oh, I'm behind the times.
I know. And Marvel shelved their Predator book, and I know that there's some rights issues. So who knows? Fingers crossed.
Oh,
we might get it back.
So this is going to be the Predator Batman podcast.
I promise we will not. This conversation, I think it's like 2 episodes removed now, has currency in my life where because every once in a while we'll talk about how cool it was. I pitched my Predator ongoing TV series to a buddy of mine who works in the industry, and he was the first one to go, that is the coolest idea. I'm like, see, you know who doesn't like it? Tom King. He thinks that Predator on a pirate ship is stupid, and it just kills me. And I'm like, it's on a pirate ship. It's a bottle episode. Do you understand how cool this is? Because you got and it's closed end. You could use.
Where would he go? What would he?
They go below deck. That's the thing. It's all contained. Where do they go? Indeed, that's the challenge. That's the thing. Writing works when you have constrictions, man. You know how it is.
Just give him a beard.
It's only 35 minutes long. That's all I'm asking, man. He's only looking for the one guy. Anyway, but you that's only 1 episode. But no, seriously, you have so many things in the air, so many things coming out. Obviously, everybody's talking about the Substack thing. We will get there. Congratulations. This is your first creator-owned book, which
the first
thing
I've owned. Yes.
Yeah, that you own. That's right. Because everything else you've made, although you could argue some of those stories are very much kind of their own thing and from the ground up. Sheriff of Babylon. This is breaking out of that into building a world from the ground up. I will ask you a genuine interviewer question, and then we'll move on to an actual genuine conversation. But for you, what are some of your challenges of writing in an established world versus when you're actually building from start to finish, something that you don't have any context for? Where do you even get your bearings for something like that?
I'm going to give you my actual honest answer instead of a bullshit answer. So I apologize for that. The number one thing I have to deal with is guilt. This is a very strange thing, but when someone assigns me something and I'm just here is a piece of coal, polish it until it becomes a diamond. And you're kind of that's my assignment. And I just need to work as hard as I can on this thing.
Right.
Someone says Vision, is dead, do something. That's fine. When I'm writing a creator owned, constantly in the back of my mind is Tom, you have chosen this. You didn't pick out a piece. Someone didn't give you this piece of coal. You looked over the entire earth and said, I just want that piece of coal. You ignored all the other diamonds and said, I'm going to work. And so my mind is constantly is this the best thing I can possibly make in the whole world? Everything is open to me. Every story. I could do a fantasy story. I could do a future story. I could do a rocket ship. I could do a pirate ship. I could do a stand-in for Predator and a pirate ship and totally rip off your idea.
If you did, I'd appreciate it, because my pirate ship idea is never going to get done. So someone might as well take it. But
that's honestly is the hardest part. Is I'm always writing with kind of an eye towards, is this the best thing I can do? Which can be something that paralyzes you. If you're constantly it's a challenge to overcome. I mean, that's why comics they're usually not paralyzing, because usually there's an editor at the end of it who's get the script in on this time, do this, and that's what kind of keeps you on track. And if you don't have those sort of borders around you, it's kind of harder to push forward.
Yeah. Well, despite the fact that it is kind of scary, and now you have no guilt associated with it, or maybe the guilt is that I have to kind of choose and pick your darlings. You've done it. It's here. It's free.
Yes.
I'm sure tons of people have read it already. Have you gotten the bug? Are you because so many creators who work within established universes, once they do their first creator owned, their first universe they've built themselves, they go, screw every other universe. I just want to play in my playground from now on. Like, has this given you the bug to be like, all right, well, I've done it. It worked. It's the collaboration is impeccable as it often is. And I actually should have asked you off camera. Instead, I gushed about Predator. But how about? Can you please help me understand? Can you pronounce your art collaborator's name on Love Everlasting? Is it Chartier?
Elsa Chartier.
Chartier. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. She has a YouTube channel. I could just watch that, which I have, and it's amazing. But she never says like, "This is my name."
I took 9 years of French. I took French in junior high. I took French all through high school, and I took French all through my fucking college.
Wow.
And cannot speak a goddamn word.
I thankfully I only took Spanish, and but when I do get the chance to say French, I love it. French is such a great language, and I never get to say it, or I never get to use it. But
the bane of my existence. It was the class I least liked. Now we're so far off topic talking about French. But conjugating all those verbs and all those tenses, and
I forget.
I remember what was feminine and masculine every single freaking word.
Yeah. But getting a chance to work with getting a chance, but like you both get a chance to work with each other. But Chartier, her art is phenomenal. So I can imagine that also gives you a chance to be like, dude, where else can I go with this? What else can I do? Do you feel that way, or are you just kind of like focused on this one thing right now?
I'm 100%. I won't lie to you. The day before Love Everlasting was to hit, I had this kind of drop in my stomach, being like, because this is a book that's not like any other book. It's not like I'm like, okay, here's just another saga. It's another two people in the future and dealing with problems, or here's another.
Subversive take on the industry,
I'm just gonna use Brian K. Vaughan books. It's not like a bunch of teenagers in an '80s movie. This is something like I'm using old romance comics to tell kind of a sci-fi horror story.
Yeah, which you buried the lead on really well, because all you did was plug old romance stories and talk about how much you loved old pulpy romance comics and how like that was the industry for a good long time and how they kind of fell by the wayside. And then you read it and you're halfway through and I'm like, and I'll be honest with you, I'm reading the book and I'm like, okay, yeah, he's delivering. Like it feels like pulpy, old, like classic, idyllic versions of those books. And I'm just about to go like, all right, well, here we go. And then boom. And that's a testament to you as a writer, but like right at that turn, we hit the hook and it's, okay. It's not just like, it's not trouble again. It's not like some attempt at bringing romance comics back. It's also got this science fiction horror element to it, which I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah, it was tough to hold back. I admit because it's one of those things where there's a twist in the issue. And now I'm willing to totally talk about it. When I first launched it, I wanted people to be like,
sure.
This is nice and sweet, so that when they got to the sort of the sour and mean and the twist at the end, they would be surprised. So it was, but the idea that, nothing on the shelf looks like this. A lot of people draw like Elsa does, which is to channel this sort of Darwin Cook, Mad Men, idyllic comics. People I've worked with, she reminds me a lot of Doc Shaner. It's not the same style, but it's the idea that like it's both modern and nostalgic at the same time.
Yes,
in sort of a beautiful way. And it's perfect for this book, which which hits you with the nostalgia and then pops you in the face with modern. Yeah. So I was very at the last second. I was like, why did I do this? I should have done, I don't know, like a pitch where it's World War II and they go fight demons, like something easy,
Yeah, totally.
But it's worked out. People have gone apeshit over the first issue, and I'm so excited about that. And it does help that it's free. And the second, we got way ahead. So the first arc is done. The first 5 issues will come out on time and for free.
That's awesome.
On the Substack, go to my Twitter page just to plug it.
I'll put it in the
pinned tweet. Yeah, all that stuff. So if you want, it's totally free. All you do is you go in, you put in your email, you click a thing, and there's no in-app purchases or spam or any of that crap. You just get a free comic. And it's I couldn't be more proud of it. I just think this is just it's wonderful. The idea is cool. It's fun to do. But you asked me, am I addicted to it? Because it's a really good question. Because this, I talked to like Brubaker and Vaughn, and they were just like, not screaming at me, but being like, Tom, what the hell are you doing with your career?
Right.
Kind of things.
Like F the big two. Like, why are you even dealing with it at this point? Yeah.
Yeah, where they were just like, it's so much more fun to play with your own toys, and you get to keep them for the rest of your life. And this is a very tough industry, and eventually these big companies, AT&T and Disney, are trillion-dollar companies, and eventually they won't need you, and you need to sort of build your own empire.
Yeah.
Which is true of every single freelancer. And they were just, and I was like, no. But yeah, trying this and doing it for the first time, it was freeing. It was brilliant. And it did sort of feel like walls were collapsing in front of me as I wrote. This was such an easy comic to write because I was like, oh, this is something I couldn't do at DC. This is something I can be a little more bizarre, a little more odd, I can take more risks than I can with my books. Although that said, I'm at a place in DC where they give me so much freedom to do so many cool things. I'm not,
you're not dunking on DC. You're just saying like, at this point, because I'm sure you hold yourself to a standard or an expectation where you're like, I can go nuts, but like I probably shouldn't go too nuts. I don't want to give my like editor an aneurysm, So with this case, you're like, I am the editor. Like, who cares? I mean, you did bring your own editor into this, though.
There's no Elsa and I are the editors of this book.
No shit.
We are doing it. We are. Hiring is the wrong way, but we were the ones who chose the colorist and chose the letterer and chose the proofreader.
Wow, that's fun. Is that your first experience doing the editor job, like being the curator of the book?
It is, yes, and it's very hard.
Yeah,
not because of the big things and making the big decisions. It's not hard for me to be like, I want to work with Clayton Cowles. I work with him every single other book, and it's not hard for Elsa to be like, I want to work with Matt Hollingsworth because he's brilliant and he colors beautifully. The hard part is just like, like the day before the wrangling, and the day before it went on, I looked at the cover. I was like, we forgot to put a number on this cover. We forgot to put... Like I never have, I've been working at DC for like a decade. I've never been like, oh, you forgot to put what number of Batman issue this is.
No, that's true.
That's never come up. They always handle that part for me. So
sure.
All of that stuff has been difficult, and the weirdness of like Matt's a British guy who lives in Romania, and Elsa is French, and Clayton and I are in America, and trying to figure out the finances on that. And my accountant's like, what are you doing to me? So yeah, it's complicated, but it's ultimately rewarding for just what you said, which is like you get to create something that's beautiful and right from your gut.
Now, did this come from you having this germ of an idea, or was this Substack came to you, they're like, here's a bunch of money, make a book, and you were like, what do I got?
No, so Elsa and I were already prepping the book before Substack.
No kidding. That's
not
cool.
Existed, but before it went to comics.
Yeah.
We were prepping it as an indie title, and so the idea. I think the first issue was almost done by the time Substack came to us.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's why Substack came to us, and like I think a lot of people are launching. They're like, this is what the plan is. Here's some initial sketches, which is understandable. If Substack's like, okay, we want you to launch, here's a bunch of money, make some comics. Like, it's gonna take time to make comics.
That's right.
They came to us. They're like, here's a bunch of money, and we're like, we've already made a comic. We could launch day one with a comic, and they're like, that's one. So we're the first people to be like, here's our launch, here's our full book, and next month you get another book, and next month you get a book after that. So we were lucky to be in that. It was kind of kismet to sort of to be exactly in the right place at the right time, where we could launch this book together.
Yeah, I know that on the comic side, because like digital is everyone has been talking about digital's future for like I think a decade, and it still isn't, but it's still pretty great. And I know a lot of folks kind of like, I mean, it's great, but like you look at the numbers and it's just like print's still selling better. And
digital's not the future. Digital is the now, and it's
happening.
It's peaked. I know it is what it is. It's not gonna take over print at least for the next 20 years.
No, exactly. Guess. Like if it was going to, it would have already. Like we've been living in it. So there are some folks who are looking forward to seeing this book, but like they can't abide. They can't read a print book or a digital book. They just can't. It will be available in print at some point.
Yes. At some point, it will be in comic book stores available for people to read, of course.
But when you want to read it, it's free and available, and you can read it through a PDF or what is it?
So I had to figure this out because I'm an old man. It's CBR.
CBR, thank you.
And what that basically means is if you have any app or something for reading comics, and there's a bunch of free ones on the app store, it'll just automatically go into that, and you can read it through that app.
Okay, great. Man, yeah, I haven't seen that file name. I know people are talking about it, but way back in the day. Like I remember Marvel when they were trying anything, when motion comics were a thing you can get on a DVD.
I remember that when Bendis was writing them with Alex Malik,
and they had voice actors,
and they had voice acting Spider-Woman.
Man, I was like, I remember watching it and being like, this ain't the future. Like money was
slowly descending.
Oh my god, yeah. What's funny is it actually wound up becoming the free comic book trailer on YouTube. Like that's the format that became. But I remember Marvel put out every issue of Amazing Spider-Man for like, I think you get like a CD for $5 to $10, and they were like every issue of Amazing Spider-Man. And
I remember that, yeah.
And there were CBR files, and I was like, is this like legal? Is this real? And it's like, no, Marvel was just so desperate. They're like, here's literally 500 issues of Amazing Spider-Man, and I'm like, purchased. But yeah, those files they're still using that file type. Like from 2001.
A great example of being your own editor. Today, I literally learned this today, and someone's like, the CBR file is not working now. It's like, they're only doing this on CBR, Comic Book Resources? And they're like, Tom, Tom, you are old and dumb. You need to catch up with life.
I'll be honest, like when people, because I remember there were also like CRZ or CLZ files. They were like something else, but I remember when they called them CBR, I was like, did CBR like facilitate their production or something? Like I also thought there was a connection with CBR, so don't feel too bad, or I should feel bad that like
I'm like, when everyone went on Substack, I'm gonna admit to you, like I did not subscribe to people. It seems very weird to me. I do like to read physical comics, so I want to say this to people who are kind of hesitant.
On the fence.
Like I was like, I don't want to go to a website and give them my email. They're gonna steal from me, and it's a whole thing. And I was exactly there. I did, I was starting this, so then I had to subscribe. So it's super easy, and it's not all intimidating. And there's literally you put your email address, there's a button you click, and there's another button that says, do you want a PDF, where they just give you a PDF, or you can get a CBR file, and that's it. It's 3 buttons, and suddenly the comic appears. It's not an intimidating process, and I'm an old fart. I remember my grandmother had rotary phones. I can still remember how much my fingers hurt doing that. That's how fucking old I am.
Yeah.
So if I can do it, you can do it.
No, it's super easy. Barely an inconvenience. I remember. It's fun. You get to be part of the process. If folks out there or who are wondering, what's it like getting a comic book from a real like world famous comic book publisher? It's just like it. You get a PDF and you get to scroll and read the comic book. The difference is there's no big ugly watermark on it that'll ruin your career if you let it get leaked.
That's true.
You can just read it on your PDF. It's great. But no, and that's one of those things you talked about. Like you alluded to the idea of it there being like virtually like there's only 3 steps, and it's like if you want to get people to read comic books at all, you need to remove every barrier to entry that there exists, because even just the simple matter of like, I have a comic book, read it, 90% of your audience will say fuck you. And so
my father won't read a comic book.
No
he looks at them, he's like, I just don't understand how this works. I was like, I'm your son.
Let me explain to you. Will Eisner says that everyone knows how to read comic books. No, yeah, that's funny. Yeah, that's fair. But you're right. It is very hard. I mean, like to this day, I have trouble reading Comixology because the idea that I have to go on my computer and buy it there and then download it on my iPad. I like back in the day when you had the DC app and the Marvel app, you just pressed the button and you had a comic book. Yeah.
Even to that one little step of being like, all right, I'll go my. Oh no, now I'm all distracted by Twitter and YouTube, and I'm just like, I can't take 3 steps to my computer because I'm that lazy.
Exactly. Yeah. It ain't like it used to be, where the only competition was stickball and. And the war, but
no, the war helped, right?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, no, actually, the war was better because there was a lot of downtime.
There was a lot of downtime.
And sometimes you got a free Sergeant Rock book.
Because
in
then
your-
they
in
couldn't
your
play
knapsack.
stickball. They had all the guns on them. They're like, I can't play stickball. I'm going to read
Yeah.
comics.
You're stuck in a
We
foxhole. What are you going to do? Read Sergeant Rock. That's it.
finally got rid of the whole stickball competition. We were fucking winning. We had 4 million. Every Captain America was 4 million sold.
That's right. For me. Yeah, the comic book industry never sold better than it did in World War II. But no, eliminating the barrier to entry is so important, and like I talk about it all the time, like the removal of like cultural stigma of comics, because like that's the barrier to entry, and just like we got to start like breaking down barriers, and like we need to do it even within our own industry, like within comics. Like people are like, you're like. Okay, so like, I remember I'm old in a different way, where I remember being a Star Wars fan, and that's what like created a whole bunch of friends. Like, right, like people were like, "Oh, I like Star Wars. I like Star Wars too. What's your favorite one?" And we had different ones, and it didn't make us like hate each other. But now it's like tribalism and compartmentalization, decentralization of media has like made everybody be like, "Well, if you don't like Empire Strikes Back, I'll just go over to this community, and I've curated an entire Empire Strikes Back community." Like, comic books used to be, oh, you read comics, which ones? And now we're part of a community. But now it's like, oh, when we release a video about Marvel, they're like, I only watch DC videos, sorry. I'm like, what? You like the show, but you only watch the ones with DC? There's 50% of other books or other shows. So we need to start like breaking down barriers and being like, yo, try it. Like, try it, and it takes no effort. Click 2 buttons, read this free comic that's new and interesting and innovative, and from the guy you like who did Supergirl and Batman. If you
Look, I can't relate more to this. When I was 13 years old, and it's good because it's the 30-year anniversary. Oh God, so I just gave away my entire age.
Yeah.
Image came out, right?
Yeah.
And I was a Marvel DC guy. I was, I spent my allowance. I lived my life in comics as a kid.
Yeah.
And Image came out, and I was like, oh, no, I don't read indie comics.
Yeah, exactly.
Image! That was the least indie thing that ever happened. It was like, just, it was like big action.
Yeah.
The guys I loved at Marvel, even they could not drag me over because I was like, I am a Marvel and DC guy. That's just, these heroes have no history. Why would I ever think of picking them up?
Of course.
Yeah, I know. I totally understand. And yeah, it is a barrier, but it can be overcome. Saga sells a ton.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. No, it's true.
And I mean that's the ironic thing about comics, that comic book creators, ever since I got in, it's the same conversation over and over again, which is like, we need to create more diverse comics. That's how we bring people outside of comics in. And then someone says, but if we create more diverse comics, then the people who are already in are not happy, and we lose them. And then it's like, it's this sort of endless funging of those two dynamic kind of forces.
Yeah.
And there's no proper answer for that. No. But it's an endless argument.
I was just talking internally with a couple of my colleagues about it, and we were talking about how I was reading. I have a whole Wizard magazine collection because I was a kid who read comics, and that was my lifeblood.
I loved Wizard magazine.
Right? Wizard was the best, except for how terrible it was. But I loved Wizard because it felt like it was a community that I was a part of. That like, because nobody else I knew read comics, so it's like, oh, here's people who get it.
Same.
Right? And they make the jokes, and I'm like, oh, you can like make like, cultural references, but to really niche stuff like Captain America. But I'm reading a Wizard, and I'm reading like interviews with creators, and it's just like, this book is 30 years old, and people are talking about how they have to get these new readers. We got to get these new readers, and we got to figure out how we're. And I'm like, dude, you've been chasing new readers since like 1975, and let me tell you something. Like, they didn't all die, so like you are getting new readers. Like, every time that you're chasing these new readers, like you are just like. You're just poisoning the well. But at the same time, you do need to diversify. And I feel like today there are more comics for everybody than ever, right? Like, there's more comics available right now than ever, and also more different comics. So like, anyone who could be interested in a comic book has one catered to their interests.
And this is different from like 15 years ago. 15 years ago, you're like, I want to read a zombie book. There's one zombie book everybody's reading.
Here's the one, right?
Here's the one. Yeah.
You want to read a zombie book now? It's like, well, I mean, like, what genre do you want? Do you want like them, like, being in love with each other? Do you want like horror? Do you want action? Like, there's any number of options. You want to read a Batman book? Well, I got a few options for you.
We have a few Batmans available for the concerned consumer.
Yeah, exactly. But apropos of the wizard thing, it just reminded me because I was rereading it because I keep them like around because like I liked the community they built, regardless of how you feel about them in hindsight. But
well, you know those guys who ran Wizard went to run DC for the last 20 years. The last editor just left. Cunningham. Cotton,
Cunningham.
And I forget the last guy, but the three of them were at DC. They were kind of like the Wizard editors.
Was it really them? I didn't realize. I guess that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
I'm talking more about the Shamuses and the the others. What's his name? Pat McCullum. And,
Pat McCullum was at DC. So yeah, so that was the third one I just couldn't think of. So
there you go.
It was Pat, Mike Cotton, Pat McCullum, and John Cunningham were all DC for the last like 10 years.
That's
Cotton just left just recently. It was last Wizard guy.
Because I was just thinking about because I was reading the issue. I think it's issue 50 where like they're doing the tour, and I'm like, God, if only I had, because I live in New Jersey, so I could have driven the 2 hours to Congers, and I'm just like, but I wasn't old enough to drive, and no one was going to drive 2 hours to take me to a warehouse, especially because they wouldn't have wanted me in there. But like, God, I would have loved to have seen it. But you see this, and I'm like looking at the staffers, and I'm like, what did they all do? Like, what do you do when you eat, breathe, and sleep comic books, and it's during the time when like the pre-orders for Gen 13 are 2.5 million per issue? Like, what do you do when the bubble bursts and the magazine folds and and all you did for 10 years was talk about like comic books? And I guess they all went to go work for DC.
All went to work for DC. That's right.
But I can imagine like being a company that like criticized or took kickbacks from, or at least commented on the industry if like they were welcome in the industry after it fold. Like, hey, yeah. So I talked about like I like my magazine dictated how sales were for like certain books of yours, but would you like to give me a job now? Like, I can't even imagine that kind of conversation.
It worked.
It did work.
That's all I can tell you.
But I was
I can also say it was behind the scenes stuff. 4 or 5 years ago, DC was like, we want to put out a Wizard magazine. Like, it went so far as that, and they got
those guys,
and Mike, those guys, and be like, do it again, but just for us.
Yeah, so I saw that.
That was how they internalized.
It was such a good idea. Maybe I feel like maybe the magazine wasn't the way to go. Maybe like a YouTube channel, but
where were you? Where were you? We
making my own. I was in the indie space, making my own world, man. That's what I was doing. Because I own it now. Can you imagine? No, I'd be on the street. But I was reading a Wizard, and I was reading an interview with Jim Lee where he was talking about Gen 13, and he was like, I'm looking at the big two, and I'm really sad by how they're trying to like image up their universe. So I wanted to create characters that actually like used spandex and just did superhero stuff again. And I was like, wow. It reminded me of like the Marvel DC rivalry where it was like Stan being like, well, they're saying we're using a lot of word balloons, so pull all the word balloons. It just felt like, art dictating life. And like Jim Lee being like, yeah, it looks like Marvel's trying to copy us, so let's just do what we wanted to do at Marvel over here again. Like, let's just make X-Men.
Yeah,
let's just do it here. So yeah, nothing could be further from indie than like Wildstorm.
But see, you could accomplish that if you're Jim Lee, because you're like, and then I'll draw the first few issues and I'll find J. Scott Campbell somewhere. Like
that's the thing. Like, yeah, you got Brandon Choi, J. Scott Campbell, and Jim Lee. So it's like, oh yeah, everyone's gonna pre-order this book. Like everyone's gonna buy that. So yeah, didn't matter what it was. That being said, I did just pick up the Gen 13 starting over hardcover edition.
I have it as well. Well, I got it for free.
I got it for $5 off, but I did not get it for free. It feels so weird seeing the DC logo in front of this, though.
Isn't it bizarre?
Just so used to, yeah.
They've owned Wildstorm for like 20 years now.
I know.
Longer than Wildstorm existed.
I know, but it's still in my blood. I'm still like, no, that's not DC, man. Anyway, so really quick, we were talking off mic about Human Target, which I have in my hands because it's probably like the most striking cover in the last couple of years.
Isn't that beautiful? God,
I love it.
Let me know I had nothing to do with that cover. It wasn't like someone's like, hey Tom, I have some ideas. That was just all from Greg Smallwood, put it all together, including the lettering and the
like how you did the credits,
all that stuff. That's all the brain of Smallwood.
This is when you see it on the rack, you have to buy. Like you just go, oh, that one. But this is okay. So here's where I lose all my credibility. It's funny because every time we built an audience by me being critical of comics and me being critical of creators and not being afraid to be like, hey, this creator like fucked up.
Oh, you're the best, man. You're the first person who's like, Tom, I don't know about some of that Batman run. And I was like, yeah.
No,
I get it. I get it.
It's your book. I mean, like,
I knew you were honest, and I appreciated it. I was like, this is coming from the gut and the heart. I like it.
Yeah. Well, people get pissed because like we'll have someone on like you where I was critical of your run, but then there's other stuff that you do, and I'm like, but I wouldn't, if I just hated their work, I wouldn't want to talk to them and just be like, I hate your stuff and it sucks and you're garbage. Like that's what people expect, and so I know I'm gonna get shit for this, but I don't give a crap because it's so good. I was Human Target. We'll talk about other books, but like, because I was talking to my wife about this, and she was, I said this, and she goes, "You're really gonna fucking say that? You're really gonna say that when Supergirl exists? You're gonna say that?" But Human Target, the first issue blew everybody away. It was amazing. But like by issue 4, I'm reading this book, and I'm like, I think this might be like a perfect comic book, and I it's like how Godfather is like a perfect movie, you know, like, oh, I don't see any flaws except for like when Sonny is punching Carlo and you could see that he's missing him. But like, other than that, like, it's one of those things where it's just like everything that they're doing. Yeah. But everybody's like, everything is going exactly the way they want. There's no like weirdness, you know, like everything about it is working. And it's like there's subtlety and like when there's a sequence here where Chase is looking at Ice and Blue Beetle, you can see on his face, he's like, he later says it in the issue, but like you can see on his face what he says later, and I knew what he was going to say because of the facial expression. And it's just like, where else in comics can you capture that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so, I mean, you wrote it, but like, you know, I was just like, I was blown away. And it's only issue 4. There's 12 more issues. So it's like
best podcast ever. I should do this every night.
Yeah, well,
this is just for my ego. I'm going to beam this right to my children.
But yeah, no, but genuinely,
I'll try to sell my father to read it.
I'd be like, why?
Why don't get his pictures?
Look at all these freaking colors. Forget it. But like, what attracted you? Like, what was it about this where you were like, I want to do Human Target? And
dude, I have no idea what's gonna. Can I just tell you how ignorant I am of what is good and what is bad and what's gonna work and what's not gonna work?
Oh no, you never know. Like that's the whole point, right? Is like being creative is like you just take your shot and just hope it works.
You really like when I was. I mean, this is from the beginning. Like when I was doing Omega Man, Sheriff, and Vision.
Yeah,
like Vision was the last one. It was the one I probably thought would go nowhere because it was such a big weird comic and I had no faith in that being, and Walto was not like a known quantity as an artist, no. and even Jordi Belair was coloring it. People didn't know Jordi back then. That's how long it was. And then like I thought like, oh, Omega Man, I'm doing 9-panel grids. I'm Watchmening the fuck out of this thing.
Yeah.
And Omega Man's great. I love it. But it was Vision that took off and became a TV show and stuff. It was like, like I had no idea that was gonna be the one of all the stuff I was writing. I had no idea Human Target would sort of strike that chord and resonate the way it is. It's beyond. I mean, a lot of so much of it is Greg Smallwood and what he's doing, and he deserves every piece of credit. I mean, yeah. I wrote to him. I didn't even know I wanted to do this book until he did the first cover and showed me sort of what he was thinking it would all look like. And I was like, okay, now we can do something super special. And yeah, I don't know, it boggled. I turning in those scripts. I remember telling my wife, I was like, "What am I writing this week? I don't know. DC's paying me to write this, like,
right?" Oh yeah.
I wrote a fight scene with the Magic Bear today where the superhero doesn't take place and said drinks the whole time.
Yeah, no,
you know, and you're just like,
yeah.
But yeah, I got the comic gods shine down on me, and smile down on me, and it's working so far. And the nice thing is, since I wrote it all together.
Oh yeah.
I wrote it. You know, I took months off. I sat down, wrote all 12 issues. I don't have to like the Vision was tough because, you know, like I was writing it as it went. So people were like, wow, this is the best. No offense, but people were like, you know, this is really good comics. And I was like, crap, I still have to write the rest.
I can't even imagine. Is that daunting where you're like, because it's not all done. So you're like, I hope I do it? Like, does that make you like rewrite the same page over and over again where you're like, oh shit, like this isn't great comics like what like they said on that interview or like on that write up? Like, I need to live up to their expectations.
It can be very daunting. I think what keeps you sane is again the deadlines. Like Mr. Miracle hit these chord kind of like it was a big deal. I was coming out and I was still writing it, but fortunately I was so worried about Batman at the time because double ship Batman and that book sells a ton. So there's a lot of eyes on you that like Mr. Miracle always kind of felt like a break, like it's less stressful.
Fair.
In some ways, so that kind of took off that sort of eye of Sauron.
Oh sure.
And then this one where it's already all done, I can be like, okay, because you're always like, what was I doing when I was writing that? Because that's really working. Should I eat that banana in the morning that I was eating back then? Like, what was the magical? This I can be like, okay, past Tom knew what he was doing. I'll just trust him that this went well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's so nice of you to say about Human Target. I love that book, and it's really fun. Again, and Clayton Cowles on the letters killing it too.
Yeah. I want. It's funny because like Black Label, I assume Black Label is more or less incidental to the Human Target. Like Human Target would have been Vertigo. It would have been. It might not have even been anything. It might have just been DC if the Black Label didn't exist. But I love this opportunity Black Label affords. I wish. Well, we'll get into that. Maybe we'll get into that later. But like I may every smaller DC character get this kind of treatment. Like, and I don't mean when I said that, people are like, "You want Tom King to write every single hero?" And I'm like, absolutely not.
Yeah, no, please.
Like, but like, this is an opportunity where you really can showcase because, like, I don't blame DC for being like, Batman sells. How about 7 Batman books? And but like as long as there's this there's this recognition of like we have this greater universe, we have all these characters, and they're all special and they all have value, and maybe not Gangbuster, but like most of them have value.
Brother Power the Geek, maybe
right?
Not going to translate.
Well, you never know. But if you give them like an 8 to 12 issue miniseries and it's written by a passionate creator who like gets the character or has a really really solid take on them, then you can elevate them to the point where it's like now they can see the way we see those characters. Like now everyone can view them in that light. That's all. Yeah. I don't know.
No, there's no character at DC or Marvel that can't be elevated and you can't tell a great story about.
Yeah, as long as like they have the opportunity. Like the thing is, you just got to give them the chance to be there. Like, you got to publish it.
It's just like humans. I mean, you run into any random human, and who's lived you don't even have to have lived any part of your life. If you talk to them long enough, you will find a story in them that's compelling. I don't think there's any human out there who doesn't have a story that's compelling in them. Whether it be something happened to them in childhood, something happened yesterday, some job they just took, something they did, some huge mistake they made, some success. Maybe they're the most boring person in the world. Well, that's fascinating. How does the most boring person in the world go about their day? That's very
right.
Fun.
Yeah.
So like comic book characters are the exact same way. Every one of them has some amazing story inside of them. You just have to find it.
Well, and plus they have a flashy costume and a neat power. So it's like the work is already half done for you. Like
not Chance. He just has a suit and tie.
No, but everybody else has powers around him, and that's what's kind of cool. True. Like that look on his face when Ice and Beetle are doing their thing, and he's just like, "Oh my god." He's piecing it all together, and I'm like, I remember being in theater and playing drunk people.
I did theater when I was in high school.
There you go. Yeah, that's when I did theater. I don't do it community-wise, but playing drunk people and everyone always being like, the cool kids always being like, no, that's not how a drunk is, and your director being like, well, to be fair, that isn't. Writing drunk characters. Is it tough? Because like I imagine you have to like less is more, because like it's very convincing in the book, like where because like you could.
Well, Chance is always a little bit drunk.
Chance is a functioning alcoholic.
He's always got a little bit on him.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about like Beetle, Ted Cord, who can't hold it, or who wants to let go. I'm not sure which version he is yet, but but Beetle when he's like, oh, Booster, and I'm like, oh my god, this is I love it. But like, how do you know when to be like, is it mostly the artist where it's like, oh, don't draw the bubbles around their head, like. to indicate they're drunk.
I mean, the artist really has to come through with that. Mitch is incredibly good at drawing drunk people, so is Greg. But yeah, I mean, it has to like live in the dialogue. You have to know when to use your dots and your dashes
and your slurred speech or whatever.
and
You
your
have to dial it
slurred
back.
speech and on all that stuff. It's all that stupid high school theater training we have that really does come in handy, because your job as a writer is just to jump in someone's head and see what they'd say. So when I'm writing a drunk person, my head is swimming. I feel drunk. That's how and then just I write what a drunk person would say. I kind of just take on that sort of drunk attitude.
Do you write linearly, or do you just kind of go like, I've got a great scene, I do this scene?
I write linearly, yeah, front to back. Page one, I start with page 1, panel 1, and finish with one after another, for first issue, second issue, third issue. Yeah. Wow. A lot of my writing friends think that's weird. They're like, oh yeah, if I'm stuck here, I'll just jump forward and do this scene.
Yeah.
I think that's perhaps even more common than sort of my
I think it is now. Yeah. My question about that is just because, like, do you do the thing where you see like every writing tutorial, every writing discussion, it's always like, here's the story circle, here's the diagram. Do you just power through a story and like and find yourself going like, oh shit, this is happening? Or are you like, I got the beats, you plan that out, and then you write the script? Or is it more like, I just let it all come out and then fix it later?
So I don't do outlines. Not to say I don't have outlines, but I keep all the outlines in my head. I don't write down outlines.
Okay. Why don't you? Do you want? Why?
Well, I mean, first of all, some of this is trial and error.
Okay.
As a writer, that's why writing is hard to teach, because it's like
so personal. Yeah.
It's so personal. It's I don't know what's the equivalent of teaching. It's as a guy who's been bigger and smaller in his life, it's like dieting. I think that's a very similar thing. Like some diets work for some people and some diets don't work. And if you're the kind of person who has to write down every calorie, that's it. If you're the kind of person who has to work out more, and it gets really annoying when someone's like, this is how my diet worked and I lost all these pounds. Why are you eating that thing? You're like, this is how my diet fucking works. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
If I did it your way, it just wouldn't work at all for me.
Right.
That's very similar to what writing's like. It's hard to tell someone I write this way so it'll work for you, and it's hard when someone tells you the same. So the way I've through trial and error discovered that I produce the best product is I plan everything in my head, but I don't write it down, and that way the shit that's terrible I forget.
The stuff that you're just so excited about that works, you're like, well, I got to write this part down. That's funny.
Also. And I was, it's not as big a deal now, but when I first came into comics, I think it was a big deal when a lot of people sort of first started writing for the trade. Yeah. And you get a lot of writers who'd be like, okay, this issue's not that great because the third issue is going to be good.
Yeah.
But like this is my filler issue, or this is, like I just have, like I know where I'm going, and where I'm going is so great. And so like, I feel like to me, every time I sit down, I want this comic book to be as good as a comic book is. I'm not writing this comic book so issue 5 will be good. I'm writing this comic book so it will be good.
Right. If you only have 3 good issues, make this series 3 issues. Like,
that's exactly right.
Of course, you kind of have to have a couple Eisners before you can just dictate you making 3 issues. I think you can just say, "Hey, we're only going to do the good stuff."
It's easier to dictate 3 issues than 13, so
that's fair. Although that's funny because sometimes, regardless of your bibliography, they'll go, "Supergirl's only going to sell 8 issues, so you can't have 12. So just do the 8." Although I got to tell you, I am glad that Supergirl is only 8 issues, because every issue has been so friggin' good that it's like with Human Target, I'm like, I'm issue 4. I'm like, fuck, I gotta wait like months for this thing to be over, and be like, and have the whole story. Supergirl, I'm like, wow, next issue's over. Like the whole thing is done. And
there's one. You have 2 weeks left before Superman ends.
Yay! It's so good. Bill Kazevely's art,
and it came out all in time. It came out monthly for 8 issues, which is
it's only 8 issues. I should hope so.
Yeah. Oh no.
Do you mean now? Yeah, well,
Batcat is only 12 issues, and we're in year 3, so
that's fair. Yeah, all right, you got me there. Yeah, Batcat. That's a good book. I've been reading it, and it's funny because I remember being critical of your Batman run, and I'm like, well, now that it's like outside continuity or not, it's a mini series. Like we can delve into it, and so I was like, I picked it up, and I'm digging it. You know, it's a good book. But yeah, it is taking a while. Which is a shame. It's to a detriment. Do you find that, like, because I mean, you know, nobody talks about the great works that were delayed that then become a trade and then become like the best-selling works like for 30 years running. But
people forget that Watchmen, the last few issues took months to come out.
Right, exactly. But do you find now in today's like streaming, binging, highly competitive field that like delays hurt the momentum and you kind of almost never get it back? Because I feel that way sometimes when I'm like reading a book myself, or if I'm recommending books and I'm like, oh shit, it's still not out. Like, oh well, you know, and people are like, whenever we talk about plugging a book or a book series that we really enjoy, if there's a delay, like it's just lost because of something else.
I mean, I would make a distinction between a book like Mr. Miracle or Strange Adventures, where sort of like the first 6 or 7 come out on time, and then the deadlines catch up to the artists.
Yeah,
and you start getting, you know, double, and like by the end, the last 2 or 3 are kind of, that happened in Mr. Miracle, and that happened in Strange Adventures.
Yeah,
and that didn't seem to affect it. And the most important part is that at the end of that, you're going to get a trade that has no compromises on the art.
Right. I think that's the most important thing, right? Like,
yeah.
is having a finished product that is not like, oh, like you could tell like they rushed to get this done, or they needed more time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anyone who, I mean, the most famous example, of course, is Infinity Gauntlet.
Yes.
Which, you know, has half George Perez and half Ron Lim. Ron Lim is no slouch.
Did a great job, yeah.
But George Perez, if he had done all 4 of those, I mean, that would have been one of the all-time great-looking books.
Yeah. Didn't Perez get poached like halfway through? Didn't he like get taken by DC after that? Like while that was happening?
Was that what happened? I don't remember what that was.
Well, I know that like, yeah, I think there was a combination of factors, but yeah, man. Anyway. But yeah, do you notice in today's like highly competitive field that like the delays do hurt the book? Like, do you hear like the whip crack where people are like, hey, it got delayed, like we might as well not even put out a book now? I mean, like not in your case, because like they're mostly miniseries, so like the miniseries, like, well, the book's gonna end. Like,
yeah, no, I've never been on like an ongoing series where it's hit that problem. I mean, but Batcat is a totally different thing, and I mean, Clay will talk about this publicly, but you know, the life is hard, and things happen, and sometimes art is late, and when a book's, I mean, we were coming off the momentum of Batman, we had all these plans, and that book being like, by the time it finishes, I'll be off Batman almost 3 or 4 years. You know, it's like that's gonna hurt that book. There's just no way, and it has 3 fill-in issues. So I mean, I love that book, and Lord knows the ending couldn't be huger, and it sells fantastically, and people adore it. And issue 10 comes out next week, and I can't. The art is. You would look like, this is the problem with Clay, is like you're like, oh, and then you look at his art and you're like, oh, he's the best at what he does. It's worth waiting for.
Yeah.
And so, but I do think that can be a kill. You know, we're still waiting for Wildcats #2, right? From
Jim Lee, from like the first DC. Yeah. Man.
From the first DC Wildcats from like 2007.
Was that Warren Ellis's? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, we're still waiting for Wildcats 2, man. Where the hell's that?
So I don't think that helped the book to have the 8-year delay for Wildcats.
Probably not. 2. Yeah, although you have things like what was it, Spider-Man Black Cat, The Evil That Men Do. I think there was a 3-year delay between issues, between like issues like 5 and 6.
Was that Kevin Smith?
That was Kevin Smith.
Yeah, well, that's different. There's the Kevin Smith asterisk exception for things.
That's fair. Yeah, I remember that interview where he was like, I remember Kevin going to Joe Quesada, and he's like, hey, I found a way we're going to finish the series, and he's like, are you going to go back in time? Like, just
go back in time.
Just so pissed. I was like, wow, yeah, like all the goodwill was just burned. Although that being said, the Dodsons, and still looks good. Like in trade, nobody knows. Nobody remembers the 3-year delay.
Nobody remembers. Of course, Dark Knight Returns, the last issues were delayed because Watchmen came out, and Frank wanted to compete with it, and scrapped a lot of his of stuff and redid it.
Did he really? Did he
yeah.
scrap stuff?
He scrapped stuff. He changed the ending and changed what he was doing to make it like a bigger, cooler story.
Do you know what he was going to do before that? Because I'm not familiar with that story, and I love that book.
I don't know what he was going to do. I know it was going to be smaller. Like it was. I probably wasn't going to have Superman in it, like that kind of thing.
Okay. I would love to know that.
We should talk. I'll ask Frank next
time.
Yeah,
please. Yeah. Yeah, bring him in. We'll talk about it. Because
Frank and I had to do a lot of talk with the Rorschach guest appearance, so we were on the phone like every day for a month. So.
Oh, sure, yeah, man, yeah. I have 2 copies of that hardcover, and I will read it someday.
It's okay.
I can't wait to talk. No, you love that book. I remember I was like, oh, I read the first issue, and I was like, nah. And you're like, read it again. Come on. And I'm like, all right. But and I waited for it to finish, and then I got the hardcover. I'm like, all right, here it is. Let's sit down. And then I just, life.
I love that book. I could not be more proud of it. I am happy to sort of have moved on to the next generation of books.
Yeah, because that's like that are less phases, right?
Less minor key. Yeah. It's Strange Adventures, which is also very good. Those books are angry. They're just there's a lot of anger and angst in them, and Human Target and Supergirl have a little bit of hope in them. I'm kind of in a more hopeful mood these days.
That's great because you do both very well. I know that like one of the criticisms of King books is like, well, here comes the misery fest, but he's pretty pissed. I hope a strong, independent woman comes in and helps him out. But at the same time, your joy is palpable, and like with Supergirl, like. Fuck, man, that book is good. Evely's art really just like there's just in the last issue when she lands on the pirate ship, which by the way, apparently nobody has a problem with pirate ships when it happens to Supergirl. But
those are space pirates. If you want to put him on a space pirate ship,
where's he gonna go anyway? It's still space. It's still open ocean. But when Supergirl lands on that pirate ship, like it's been a long time because I love comics and I bleed 3 colors, but like. It's been a long time since I've read a comic book and I saw art that made me like that. Like it played sound like it when she hits the ground, like you could feel the weight, like that moment of like, ugh, and it's just there's you have a few. I'm sure you have a couple of panels in your head where you're like, there are moments where you felt that moment, or like you felt that like impact, or that like just there's some sequence. Like I know there's like old classic Bagley art where I'm like, Spider-Man did this one thing, I'll never forget it, or like a hand gesture. But like in that case, that Supergirl landing, I'm like, this is a next level book. And that's just that's all I have to say about that. Just Supergirl's great, but I know that
I had to write that book in one day. It's a fever dream of a book.
No,
issue 7.
That issue.
That issue I had to write in one day.
Now, why did you have to write it in one day?
So issue 6, which is my favorite issue of the run, I turned in the script for it, and this happens not often, but I have a very good editor he's sort of hands off, very supportive and everything.
Yeah.
And I turned in issue 6, and he does he's like swing and a miss, like
what?
you just it's not that script you're reading. But he's like you turn in a script, it just doesn't work. Like, it happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was sort of ready to start 7, sort of looking at I'm very strict about my deadlines and hitting them all.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I just did the calculations. I was like, okay, I have to rewrite issues. He's like, how do you want to do this? And he's like, rework. We could rework. I was like, no, just tear the whole thing out. I'm going to rewrite 6 entirely.
Yeah.
And turn it into her origin issue, which is what it became.
Yeah.
And then, but because I was taking up so much time writing issue 6, my deadline for issue 7 was shrinking as I wrote more of issue 6 until I had one day to write issue 7. I remember I just told my wife, I was like, I'm going into my office. I'm not coming out for 24 hours. And when I come out, there will be a finished Supergirl script.
Oh my God.
And like I closed my door, like the kids, kids are like, don't bother daddy. My music is blaring. And that's how issue 7 came about. It was a one. I can't think of another example where I had to write like all 24 pages in a day.
That's amazing.
But I don't like missing deadlines. It makes me upset.
That's really cool. That's a good quality to have. I'm sure that's why editors like you. Issue 6 is the one my wife, who is like my like barometer for quality, she was like, holy shit. Loved it. I did too, but she was like, how could you say Human Target is perfect when Supergirl number 6 came out? But yes, issue 7. Oh yeah,
that comic making. I cut out 2 pages of that book and put them up on my daughter's wall. That's
Number
how
6
much
or
I love
7?
issues. 6.
6, yeah.
There's the part where he says, "Someday you'll be a woman and I'll be gone, but you'll still be my little girl." I cut that out and put it on my daughter's wall, just so she kind of has that with her, you know.
Yeah. She's like, why? Don't take.
Yeah, this is horribly depressing,
This is
Dad.
really
Why is this
depressing.
on my wall?
You're like, you're a king, damn it. That's why.
She's like, I read Archie comics, not this BS.
Archie comics. You know, someone at Archie right now is like, really? You
Dude, my whole house is Archie. My 2 youngest read Archie like 24 hours a day. That's all. That's their like go-to.
The double digests?
The double digest. Yeah, every surface in my house is covered with double digests.
They
are everywhere. Because that's their like, we can't turn on screens, but we don't want to read a book.
So
Grab
Archie.
a double digest.
That is, yeah, it's like a candy bar. I had a friend who didn't read comics, like didn't like them, but he was like, I was like, yeah, I read comics. He's like, lame. And then I went over to his house and he has like hundreds of Archie double digests and Betty and Veronica and Jughead. And I'm like, oh, dude. And he's like, yeah, please, excuse me. Like, these are funny jokes. What's Moose and Midge up to? But because those are the only comics, and I was like, I lived at his house for like many years, not like literally, but figuratively.
Sure.
I read all, like, so I have like all this working knowledge of like Archie lore, and every time that like Archie showed up in the zeitgeist before, like pre-Riverdale, I was like, every time they're like, Archie's doing a thing, I'm like, this is ironic, right? Like, we're all like in on the joke of what Archie is. Like, Archie's a joke, and we're all just like publishing him for posterity at this point. And then I'm like, and then I find out, like, no, you know, it's like Turtles fans, where it's like, you know, like, I think the Turtles are over, and like a couple of 40-year-old dudes are like, oh, I'm gonna slash your tires. And I'm like, oh, apparently we're not done. But Archie's one of those things where I'm like, no, apparently people are not done with Archie, to the point where like, God, Afterlife with Archie, dude, and Riverdale and Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, like, Aguirre Sacasa, like, he's just so into Archie to the point where like he just like, I don't know. I was like, what? How can you like Archie that much? That's a rag on Archie. I do appreciate him. He's a great cultural touchstone for a lot of people. But yeah, great.
Betty or Veronica, Veronica or Betty, forever.
Let me ask you this. Okay, Betty or Veronica? Which one you pick?
I'm going Veronica every time, man. She's got the money.
Wow.
What are you talking about? First of all,
you can't put a price on loyalty. I guess.
No, Veronica has the money. She's got the attitude.
Yeah. She'll challenge you.
I married a brunette. She's a brunette. I'm just used to it.
That's fair. I married a Cheryl, so. But anyway.
Oh,
because I'm Dilton Doily. But in any case,
that's deep cut Dilton Doily. Well done, man.
Thank you. But yeah, so since we're a big fan of Wizard Magazine, I'm going to throw a couple of old Wizard interview questions at you because I thought it'd be funny because I haven't gotten one of these in forever. Here we go.
But where am I on the hot writers list?
Oh, on the hot writers?
I'm behind Jeff Johns and.
No, you're way ahead of Jeff Johns at this point, I think. But I mean, I think, and Hickman is slipping, right? Because like he left. But once 3 Earths, 3 Moons comes out, I think that's, everyone's gonna.
Damn you, Hickman!
It's because Wizard, they slip, right? So it's like, oh, Hickman slipped down to the number 2 slot.
Yeah, slipped to the number 2
for this month.
What did he do?
Who's hot or not? We'll put you in the Brutes and Babes tutorial. But okay, favorite comic book of all time, if you have one.
Flash 54, from the William Messner Loeb Flash.
Oh,
that's where he jumps.
William, yeah,
where he jumps out of a plane. It's a somewhat famous issue if you're a big Flash fan.
Way to pull William Messner Loebs, the true author of the Max. Love that guy.
Wonderful guy. Doesn't have an arm. Lost an arm, and I think was homeless for a while as well. And was homeless for. He got it when he got his honorary Eisner. They have an award for underappreciated career awards. I was there for that, and I got to go up and like.
No shit, that's awesome.
And he was super cool, and I was literally like, "You wrote my favorite comic of all time." He's like 54. I was like, I'm a cliche. What do you want?
Oh, that's awesome. He's a guy I like because there was a time. I think people can guess which time. It was pre-COVID, where I went to a lot of cons. Never saw his name on a marquee. Like never saw him at a con.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, you be cleaning up. Go to cons and set yourself up. I hope he's starting to do it now.
I would hope so. Yeah, I've only seen that one
maybe
time.
not now,
Just at the
right?
Eisners.
Oh, the one time. Yeah, yeah. Favorite work of your own. You have to give yourself some accolades. What's your favorite work you've ever done?
Like issue or
Yeah, go with your
or...
favorite single issue, and you can't say Supergirl #6 because we talked about it for 20 minutes.
I really like Sheriff of Babylon 5. I like that issue a lot.
Why that specific issue? Is it?
It's like a bottle episode of a TV show. It's just it's oh my god, it's Christopher, the lead character.
Yeah,
and Sophia. No, it's not Sophia. It's his. I can't remember the characters, but it's this like American kind of cowboyish guy and this very Islamic woman, and they have a conversation by a blown out pool about sort of life and terrorism and war. And,
cool.
And yeah, and it's one of the yeah. I like. I mean, I can name other things that.
Sure.
Mr. Miracle 6, I like a lot. That's the one they build the thing.
Right. Oh yeah.
Where they build the house.
Superpower you'd like to have.
This question you always have to be like,
besides flight, yeah.
No, but like you got to put altruism to the side. Like the best superpower would be like, I wish I could cure everyone of cancer.
No. I mean,
right.
It's selfish. Like,
yeah, we gotta be selfish in this question.
Yeah.
I have two answers. One, when I was a kid, she's obviously back, but like when magic first came,
Leona Rasputin, yeah.
Leona Rasputin, her power was she could go to another world. And she didn't know it was a demon world, but it became a demon world. She could go to another world and time didn't pass there and she could chill out.
Yeah.
And when she came back, time had not passed. I thought that was just the best. You could just, your homework was late, you wanted to sleep in, you go to this other world, you chill out. Even like you're about to die. All right, I'm going to go in this other world, chill out. I'm not dying for the rest of the time. Like I just thought the fact you could go someplace and stop time for a little while, I would love that power. The actual power I would like to have, I would just, as I get older, this is such an old fart fucking answer, but I would like to be able to talk to dead people. I know a few people have had that power. Just to have a conversation with my grandmother and my mother again. I would I know it's like a sentimental shit, but
that's nice.
That's if I would sacrifice flight or anything just to sit down and talk to my grandma for an evening.
All right, bringing it down. That's fair. I like that.
Sorry, that's fine.
No, I think it's because ever since I hit 30, everything makes me cry, and that was a while ago. Favorite toy as a kid?
G.I. Joe, 100%.
Favorite toy as an adult?
What counts as a toy?
I think G.I. Joe.
Like my iPhone?
No, because everyone you have to have one of these.
Like my original art collection, is that a toy?
That is like not a toy. That is a collectible.
So I don't have toys that I get on the floor and make up adventures with.
No,
anymore.
Obviously not. But like I've got like an Iron Giant here. He's pretty sweet.
That's a collectible. I'm not seeing the.
I play with this. It's open.
Wait, where's my Oh, of course. Oh, here's a click clacky thing that was in my kid's
a pen
stocking. And I play with this all day long while I'm trying to write, and I just stare at it and I look at the lights come on.
There you go.
The lights come on when you click it, and they go off.
Oh,
there's my favorite toy.
I find that everybody else is like toy distraction. Like I would never buy a fidget spinner, but like when I find them, I'm like, I love this.
Oh yeah, my kids are fidgeters, so we constantly have them all over the house because they just love to do that kind.
The last time you went trick or treating, you went as. These are Wizards questions, not mine.
I went as the father of young children.
That's an answer that would be in the magazine. I'll take it. Because I've never seen that answer, and I have a lot of issues with Wizard.
Nailed it.
Favorite snack?
Like healthy snack or like
nope.
Actual snack?
A real snack. Like you can
real
snack.
What do I like? What are my go-to snacks? I like the snacks in my house, but they're not always my favorite snack all the time.
Yeah.
God damn. You know what? I'm gonna go with cinnamon toast crunch.
Nice.
I get a mug like this, pour full cinnamon toast crunch. Oh man, that's the best.
Nice. That's a great answer.
That's what it means to be a latchkey kid from the 90s. You're gonna eat a lot of cinnamon toast crunch in mugs.
Damn right. What's one question you always want to get asked, but no one ever does?
Shit, that's a good question. That's a question.
How come they never fucking ask me this?
People always ask me, what character do you want to do? That's a constant thing. What character do you want to work with?
When I first started doing this, I always asked that question. And I find that always annoys the shit out of people, so I don't do that anymore.
It doesn't annoy me, but you do get it a lot.
Yeah.
And as you can see, like, I don't give a fuck about what character. I just want... so I think a better question is, what artist or what team do you want to work with? I always think that would... Like, if someone's going to ask me, like, build a team to work with now, or what artist haven't you... If you had this artist, what would you do with it? That's actually what I think as a writer. That's a much more
nice
writer question.
All right, yeah. Well, then do that. Build a team. What do you got? That's my question then. All right, I like that. Do my work for me. Thank you. What? All right, let me ask you this. Let me throw this at you. You get Bill Sienkiewicz. What book do you do?
I mean, the first thing that popped in my head was Moon Knight. In this theoretical where I go to work with Marvel.
Oh, sure. Which,
Moon Knight, The Question, maybe if I was at DC.
Yeah.
Those I probably go something street level, but an insane street level character.
Totally. Yeah.
A street level character who was going crazy.
Yeah. Is there an artist working today you've never worked with that you were like, I got to gobble them up. I got to get them at some point. Someday I'm going to get you.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch. They're all fucking Marvel.
Well, they won't always be.
I started out one of my fandoms when I was breaking into comic was this thing called Twart.
Twart.
It was a Twitter plus art Twart. So when Twitter just started, it was a bunch of artists who were like, we're just gonna post our thing. We can't break into comics. We're just a bunch of guys who met at conventions, and we're gonna post on Twitter once a week. Cool. And the guys on this Twart thing, who were all unknowns at the time, were Mitch Gerrits, Doc Shaner, Somni, Tom Fowler, Ron Salas, Gabriel Hardman, Nathan Fairborn. Nathan Fairborn, is that right? No, that's the colorist. Yeah. But anyways, but so I was a big fan of them and went to their blog every week to see what they were sort of doing, and I really thought they were cutting edge. And I've worked with most of them, but I haven't worked with Gabe Hardman. I haven't worked with Chris Somni, so I'd love to work with either of those people. They both write for themselves now. They don't want writers, so I don't think I'll ever be able to do it.
Fair. All right. Well, you never know. They might be like, I don't feel like coming up with an idea. Yeah, throw me a script. I'll do that. Oh yeah. Yeah. I had one more question. It was ready to go, but I was like, it's fine. I lost it because I just imagined a King Somni book, and I was like, no, man.
I would love to work. I waited in line once for 2 hours to get a Somni sketch. And no offense to him, but like it was one of those things where like you show up every day and you're like, hey, did you get to my sketch? And he's like, oh no, tomorrow. And then you show up Sunday night and you're like, sorry. And you're like,
yeah, I've been there.
And you already budgeted for it. You're like, I would have spent that $500 on this other thing I wanted. Now I'm leaving con with money.
With money. What do I do?
You don't want to leave a con with money.
No,
that's a failure.
That happens to me every time I go to Toy Con, because like there's this great con, Toy Con. I don't want to plug for them because they don't give me any money, but whatever.
Hey, give them some money, Toy Con.
Right, come on. But they it's an amazing show because it's like all these vendors in one place, and they got all these fucking toys that I don't know. We're similar aged. Did you ever have dreams of doing the Toys R Us run?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so like where
Toys
you
R Us was a Shangri-La when I was a child.
Same, yeah. My parents did not want to take me there, and when they 100%. Did, they regretted it immediately.
When I had young children, Toys R Us was still still a thing, and I would just take them to because I was a stay-at-home dad when I first became a writer, and I'd be like, "What are we gonna do today? It's fucking cold outside." It was there wasn't COVID. I was like, "Let's go to Toys R Us for a day and just wander the halls.
Just have at it, yeah."
And I'll get you a little $5 toys. You leave with something, you don't cry, and we'll just have fun.
Yeah, man. Wow. But I've always had these visions of like grabbing every X-Men or any action figure off the shelf and just filling it with my, filling up the basket. And then I wake up and think I put them in the closet and they weren't there. But Toy-Con is like,
definitely had that dream.
Yeah. And Toy-Con is like having that, but without all the baggage of having all those toys anymore. So you just see them. And every time a Toy-Con, I go to the ATM, I grab a shitload of money, and then I leave with that money. I never buy anything. And I just, because I think it's just, I like the idea of it all being there and still existing, but I don't need it. And that's the only con where I'm like, I left with all my money and I'm okay with that. But if I leave New York Comic Con or Baltimore with money, I failed. Like I screwed up.
When my daughter was a little younger, she's 12 now, and it's so sad. She's sort of transitioning where she's like, I don't want to play with toys. I'd rather read books. She's kind of like doing that, which is natural but sad.
Yeah.
But between the ages of 5 and 11, she loved superhero toys. That was her major thing. And so I would go to cons and I'd be like, okay, I've signed it, and I would spend every single con scouring the floor for different superhero toys, and I would basically make money at my table and then buy superhero toys with them. So my basement is like buckets and buckets of. I think I have more superhero toys than anyone on earth because I've gotten like the really weird ones that are only available in some bizarre Cleveland con that I went to in 2013 or something. So
nice.
Yeah, I spent way too much time going through toy bins and cons.
Yeah. Going back, because we're talking about comic book fans. You are a comic book fan. Is there an event out there that happened where you're like, I could probably fix that? Like I would like another shot at that story. Not like that you wrote, but one that you're like, I'd like a chance to do it again. Like to try that one. Like for me, I'd like to redo Maximum Carnage. One of those things. Like I feel like there's a great idea in there, and it's like if DeMatteis wrote the whole damn thing, it would have been awesome. I wish it was, maybe keep it trim, something like that, where it's like,
wow, go back and redo an event.
Yeah, just do another event. This is so geeky, and I'm sorry, I will move on. I'll wrap up pretty soon, but
it's hard because
I have to ask.
I'm friends with most of the people that have written the events over the last 20 years.
That's fair.
So yeah. I don't want to go in and be like,
I could probably do it better. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Dude, I would have fucking totally done. I think. So when I was a kid, I loved event books, and I would buy them in the past. So I'd be like, wow, this Secret War is awesome. So I bought the whole thing. I was like, Secret War 2, holy crap. So I bought all of Secret War 2. And that's a terrible book. And it's a very psychological book because it's about Jim Shooter. Jim Shooter, I think, very much pictured himself as the Beyonder, and sort like up to the point like he wears leisure suits. But the idea that I think I could do that book again, where a being of infinite power comes down to an earth filled of superheroes.
Yes,
I feel and walks among them.
Yeah,
I think I could do something with that concept.
I completely agree. If you ever watch any of our episodes, we did Secret Wars 2. It's one of our most popular ones of the year, and I don't know what made me do it, but I was like, let's do this, and I'm like, I'd watch two people who've never heard of this book and have never experienced it before, and like when each turn happens, he's eating glass, and like it's like everything about it, they're just like, what is happening? And I'm like, if you like the show, I promise you will enjoy this one. But it's Secret Wars 2, and I went to Jim Shooter at Baltimore Comic Con, and I was like, I brought Secret Wars number 1. I'm like, hey, and he's like, $30, and I'm like, nice to meet you, and I just kept going.
I got to talk to Jim Shooter. Was it this year, Baltimore?
Yeah, it was this year, Baltimore.
Yeah, I got to talk to him. We sat down for like half an hour. That's
awesome. He is so interesting.
No, if I was like wanted to pick one figure in the entire history of comics to make a documentary about and be like, here is the life of a person, I would pick Jim Shooter. I mean, the kid was at 13 years old. He was supporting his family writing comics. And they didn't know he was 13.
Right.
They thought he was an 18-year-old dude sending in scripts.
Yeah.
They just, when he arrived at the office, they're like, what?
Don't tell anybody.
He told me this story. I was talking about it. He's like, yeah, they called my house and like, you got to come in for a story meeting. I was like, okay, let me ask my mom. And they're like, what? Why do you have to ask your mother?
Right. Well, she's got to drive me. Like, I can't leave the house after 5 p.m. Yeah.
And then he washed out of comics, and then because he worked for Morris Weisinger, who was like the meanest person in the world, was editor at DC, and so much that like destroyed his soul, and he became like a waiter. And then he found his way back into Marvel, became Stan Lee's top assistant, took over the company, made it more successful than it has ever been.
Yeah.
And then crashed and burned there.
Yeah.
And then started another comic book company that was a huge success. Valiant.
Yep.
And all the while, you know, he's 7 feet tall.
Right. Yeah, no, he is intimidating even now. Yeah, then he did Define, and Marvel fucked him over that. Like, it's a really cool, like, he has a great, he has got an amazing story.
Yeah, just going from like 13-year-old guy to taking over an industry to falling out of the industry. There's some like Shakespearean drama that's. Why did we get on the topic of Jim Shooter? Oh, because he wrote Secret Wars 2, one of the worst. And in the meantime, he would come into books and write, and he'd always write the same story. It was all about a person of infinite powers who was misunderstood, and should have been treated better. It was like, that's what the Korvac saga is. It's the same. Oh my
god!
Right?
Shit. Well, you've poisoned the well of Jim Shooter books for me now. Now I'm always gonna be like, oh, that's just Jim Shooter. Yeah. Because I'm just, oh my god, I'm putting it all together now. All the pieces are falling into place. It's like the end of The Usual Suspects. So, Love Everlasting.
Love Everlasting
is free. You can get it.
Utterly free. It's just a free once. The first
whole
5
book.
issues at least are free.
Yeah.
You sign up for this free issue, we send you the next one in a month.
Oh, that's cool. You don't have to. So you don't have to. You only have to sign up the one time, and you will get an email that just has a thing. Click it.
Once a month, you'll get an email. Yeah, you only have to sign up one time, and you once a month you'll get an email, and you'll get a newsletter from me, which is like, hey, I have this book coming out.
That's. Yeah. I was gonna ask another question, but you know what? That's a good segue for us to wrap up. I think people have had enough of me just laughing at you at this bullshit. So, but no,
I appreciate it.
It's if you need it, like, I'm not getting paid. You know, Tom doesn't have to be here. I did subscribe to this thing. I did a whole video where I was very critical. Well, not critical. I questioned. I talk about Substack, and I'm like, hey, and people are like, you're shilling for Substack now. I'm like, no, it's where you can get a free Tom King series, and it costs me nothing, and I'm not going to sell my. I have assurances from this guy. They're not going to sell my email address. So I signed up for it. I have the book. You can have it too. It's for free, and it's dope. Like, if you want,
I should say this behind the scenes, but Substack doesn't even own It's not like you gave it to Substack. You just gave it to me.
Right? Like, no, it goes to you directly, and yeah, and they don't own the book. They don't own you.
They don't own the book. They don't own email. They don't get. They're just a website.
It's a facilitator of your content. Yeah. Is this the next step? Do you love this so much? You're like, I got the bug. I'm going to make more. I'm going to make more independent books. Or are you kind of like, I mean, this is fun. We'll see what happens.
I just wrote an independent miniseries that I finished, so it hasn't been drawn yet. So that'll do. But I still love DC. I know, like when Tynan came on, he's like, I'm leaving Twitter. I'm doing my own thing. And Lemire just made sort of that same announcement.
Yeah.
I still love writing DC characters. I still love writing superheroes. I like working with these artists. I like the editors. I like Maria. I like Jim Lee. I like that I wrote something in Batman and now I see it on the movie screen. It's fucking crazy.
That's right. We didn't even talk about Batman. We spent an hour and 15 minutes talking on a single thing about Batman and the fact that, like, now the Batman movie's coming out. There's this shit you did up there.
I know, it's crazy. I was trying to tell my wife, I was like, honey, I wrote something because I really like you, and then it got turned into something that, like, people in Kathmandu are going to look at, and she's like, well, you still have to do the dishes. I don't know what you're
right. Yeah. And that's the reason we do anything, ladies and gentlemen. We get into the arts. We perfect our craft just so we could get the women who love us to just let us put our feet up
to
for
the
a second.
TV faster.
It's all in the service of that dream of going into another dimension and just letting everyone leave me alone for 10
That's right.
minutes.
That's all. What a dream. Oh, imagine when the devil showed up, he should have been like, okay, I get it. This couldn't have lasted.
I gotta get it. And the devil's like, no. I'm just here. I didn't know what this room was. No, you're fine. Why do you think I made this room?
That's right.
But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We'll see you guys next time with another episode. Tom, we got to do this again. Hopefully, we don't have to wait for the next independent series.
You were so kind.
Please.
To have me on. I greatly appreciate that.
I appreciate you giving me the time, man. And ladies and gentlemen, go check out the Substack. Even just take a look at it. See if it passes the smell test for you. But at the very least, you get a free book out of it, which, how can you argue with that? But thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you guys next time. So long.